Hello everyone, this is Mr. Underkoffler. Today we're looking at the guided notes called Area and Circumference, when to use inverse operations. And what I did for you here at the beginning of the notes is the left side, we're going to look at an example that is not going to need inverse operations, pretty similar to what you've already done. And then we're going to look at a variation of it over on the right side, problem number 2, where you are going to need to use inverse operations. And let me show you why. Starting, though, with problem number 1. Now, this is a traditional one, so I pretty much did almost everything for you. It says, find the value of the circumference, round your answer to the nearest 10. So, you can see here we have a circle. So, what am I given? Given a circle. What are we asked to find? Well, we were told right up here to find the circumference, so that is what we are asked to find. How do I do that? Well, if you go to your Pennsylvania formula sheet, you will see that the circumference equals 2 times pi times radius. And you could use that. However, I'm going to show you something that you might not have seen before, and that is a variation of the circumference formula where 2 radiuses ends up becoming just the diameter. Spoiler alert, we're about to see how that works. Here we go. Problem number 1. So hopefully you can tell that this line segment that goes the entire way across the circle is not the radius. That is the diameter. So how would I get that radius? Well, you probably already know this. We practiced this before. You would have to cut it in half because the radius would only go half of the way from the center to the edge. That would be the radius, only halfway. So what's half of 28? Well, you could use your calculator if you really needed to. 28 divided by 2 gives you, ding, 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 fill in the blank, please, right now with your pencil, 14 yards. And then multiply that into your calculator. You'll get 87.96, yada, 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 round to the nearest tenth. Not a big deal. But if you would like to work smarter, not harder, in the future, and if you're trying to find circumference in your given diameter, then you could just do pi times the diameter. How so? Because 2r means 2 radiuses, 2 times radius, which would give you the diameter. So even though this formula is not in your formula sheet, and no, you're not allowed to write it on your Pennsylvania formula sheet, but it is a formula that does work for circumference. Instead of doing 2 times pi times radius, you can do pi times diameter. And here's the proof. You get the same answer. So with that in mind, problem number 2. Get your pencils ready. This is a little bit different. It says the circumference of the circle is 40 feet. Find the value of the diameter. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So, a little bit different. What are we given? Well, we're still given a circle. Write that down. But we are also given a circumference. Very different from last time. What are we asked to find? We are asked to find, right up here, I'm going to highlight it, or actually I'm going to underline it for you. We are asked to find the value of its diameter. So let's write that down. We are asked to find the diameter. What can we use to solve? Well, circumference is given to us, so we can't use an area formula. We got to use the circumference formula. You could use 2 pi r, but if you want to work smarter, not harder, since we're trying to find the diameter, then you can use c equals pi times diameter. Go ahead and write that down, please. And we're going to solve for the diameter because that's what they want us to find. I know, you're used to using circumference formulas to solve for capital C. I get it. But here, we're trying to find diameter. So we're not going to solve for capital C. We're going to solve for the D. Let's do it. Pencils ready. Formula, substitute, solve. The formula is C equals pi times diameter. We're going to use that one because we're given circumference and we have to find diameter. Let's substitute. We know the circumference is 40. So the C can be replaced with 40. Equals pi still pi. Diameter, we don't know the diameter, so leave that the unknown. What's the inverse of multiplying by pi? Boom, dividing by pi. I know that looks a little weird, but pi is actually a number. It's just a number that goes on forever in the decimal part, so that's why we use our calculator's value of pi. In fact, let's do that right now. In your calculator, take 40 divided by and hit your pi key after you hit divide, and you will get, well, you're going to get this ugly decimal. Since the directions told us to round to the nearest tenth, is 3/100ths big enough to make the 7 round up? I don't think so. So go ahead and write this down. This is going to be 12.7. The unit of measure was feet. If you look up here, the circumference was feet. So the unit of measure for the diameter would also be feet. We'll use the approximately equal to symbol because we are rounding. And there you go. That's how you can use inverse operations to solve for a lowercase letter like diameter. We're going to do it on a future problem for radius. You could do it for even base and height on other formulas. Problem number 3. The circumference of a circle is 131.94 feet. Find the value of its radius. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so what are we given? We are given a circle. Write this down. And again, we're told right up here its circumference. So write that down. What are we asked to find? I'm going to go ahead and underline it for you. We are asked to find the value of the radius. So let's go ahead and write that down. What can we use to solve? Well, we're not going to want to use c equals pi times d because d is for diameter. We want to actually find the radius. So we're going to use the formula you were already used to using for getting circumference when radius is involved. C equals 2 times pi times r. We're not making up these formulas. They're not coming out of thin air. They are on your pink formula sheet. The only exception was c equals pi times d. That was not on our pink formula sheet, but this one is. Now, we have to find the radius. We're going to solve it for the r. Go ahead and write that down if you haven't already. Okay, let's do this together. Formula, substitute, solve. So we just said that we were going to use c equals 2 pi r. So write that down. Always start with the appropriate formula. We got circumference. Circumference is 131.94, so substitute that in for c. Equals 2 is still 2. Pi is still pi. Do we know the radius? No, we do not, so we're going to keep that r. What's happening to the r? It's getting timesed by 2 and by pi, by both. If you want to do this the quickest way, you can actually divide by the 2 and the pi at the same time if and only if you divide by, in parentheses, 2 times pi. So ladies and gentlemen, these parentheses here are not optional. I repeat, they are not optional. So, time to use our calculator. Let's enter in 131.94 divided by, and then I want you to start your parentheses. And some of you guys in your calculators are going to need to do 2 times pi with a times button between the 2 and the pi. A lot of calculators don't need the times button, but some might. And then you got to close your parentheses. Now, if you already tested this in your calculator and it is not giving you 20.9989, etc., then maybe you need to actually hit times between the 2 and the pi when you do it in your calculator. If not, cool. But if it didn't work out, try it again. Maybe hit times between the 2 and the pi. Make sure you're using parentheses. Okay, now, I want to let you guys know there is an alternate way of doing this. You don't have to write this down, but you could actually divide by 2 without the pi, get 65.97, and then you could divide both sides by pi, and that would also work out. I don't recommend doing it that way, because, that's a lot more work. Well, I shouldn't say a lot more, but it's more writing. I'd rather just divide by 2 pi all by it in one shot, but then you have to use parentheses. So if you really don't like using parentheses, then maybe this method is better for you. I don't know. That's up to you. So you don't have to write it down unless you really like doing it that way. Then feel free to hit pause and write it down. But I'm going to go ahead and move on and do one more problem with you. Problem number 4. Let's take a look at it together. The area of the triangle is 1,134 square inches. Find the measure of its height. If you've noticed, I always like to make sure I am paying attention to what they're asking me to find. Okay, what are we given? We're given a triangle and its area. We were given the area in the original word problem. Now, we're also given lots of other measurements, but we were given the area in the word problem. What are we asked to find? We are asked to find the measure of the height. What can we use to solve? Well, this is definitely not a circumference formula. In fact, circumference doesn't even apply to triangles. This is area. Area. So what's the area formula of a triangle? Look it up right now on your formula sheet, and you're going to see it's 1/2 times base times height. That's what the area equals. Now, don't just write down 1/2 BH. Make sure you put A equals, because remember, we're going to put the area's value in for the A. So we need the A and the equals. And we are going to solve for the H. Go ahead and write that down. Hit pause if you need to catch up. Let's go ahead and do this together. Formula, substitute, solve. So start with the formula. Boom. Substitute. We know area. It's given to us right here. The area is 1,134. 1/2, I'd rather just call it 0.5 if you don't mind. It's quicker to do in my calculator. The base. Ooh. Do you remember how to identify base? Base and height. Let me get out my highlighter here. Base and height always meet at a right angle. So I always look for the right angle. The dashed line is normally the height. And, oh yeah, they even labeled it for me. How nice. So the base would be the line segment that touches the height at a right angle. It's not always at the bottom. This one it was. But if I rotate this triangle like 90 degrees or something like that, or 180 degrees, then the base would no longer be at the bottom. It might be at the side, it might be at the top. You got to always look for the right angle. Again, height's normally the dashed line, but it meets at a right angle with the base. So let's write this down. 72 is the base. We just decided that. The height is unknown. Okay, well, let's solve. Instead of dividing by 0.5 separately and dividing by 72 separately, because that's the inverse of multiplication, I'm going to go ahead and just multiply them together. Why not? That would give me 36. So now I got 36 times h. Let's divide. Inverse of multiply is dividing. So this is what I would do in a problem like this, where you can actually multiply two numbers together. Go ahead and do that first, then do the inverse, which is dividing on both sides, and boom, you're going to get 31.5 or 31.5. The unit of measure is inches. Now, I know you might be like, whoa, Mr. Underkoffler, I thought the unit of measure was square inches. No, but that was the area. Area is square inches. If you look at regular measurements are just regular inches, not square inches. Okay, now that I've done 1, 2, 3, and 4, well, number 1 was already done for us, but I did 2, 3, and 4 with you. Let's have you try some problems on your own. So try 5, 6, 7. Also try 8. Maybe not do 9 and 10 yet. We can do 9 together. So how about for now you just do 5, 6, 7, and 8 on your own. So hit pause in the video, do those 4 problems, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Then hit play when you're ready to see how you did. Okay, did you already do 5, 6, 7, and 8? If you did not, you need to hit pause now, because I'm going to go over them. Here we go. We're given circumference. We're asked to find diameter. Oh, so I would use c equals pi times d. I guess you could use c equals 2 pi r, and then after you get your radius answer, you could double it, and that'll give you the diameter. So I guess you could do it that way. You don't necessarily have to erase your work if you did it that creative way, but this is the fastest way. So let's substitute. 56.5 is going to go in for C. Even if you did it the creative way, it would still go in for C. We're going to divide by pi on both sides. For those of you who use 2 pi r, you would have to divide by 2 and pi in parentheses, like I showed you back on problem number 3. That's going to give you 17.9845. If we round to the nearest tenth, like the directions said to, then it would be 18.0, because the 8 makes the 9 round up, giving us 18.0. If you did it the creative way, you would have got something close to 9. It might have been like 8.99, and then you would have doubled it, and then got the 17.9845, and then you round to the nearest tenth. I wouldn't do it the creative way, but it could work. All right, problem number 6. Did you even recognize what this shape was? It's normally drawn like this. This is a parallelogram, and the way I know this is because it's a four-sided shape with two pairs of parallel sides. Now, they gave me area. And the area formula of a parallelogram, as you can look it up from your formula sheet, is A equals base times height. Now, careful. Who's the base? Who's the height? Well, first of all, we know the area right up here is 1,189. You might be like, should I square it? No, don't square it. The inches are squared. That doesn't mean you square the number. It just means little tiny squares that are 1 inch by 1 inch. So if you accidentally squared this number, you're going to have to hit pause, erase it, fix your work. Equals, who's the base? Who's the height? Well, the height's unknown. And you can see dashed line. We talked about this back on problem number 4. The dashed line is normally the height. It meets here at a right angle. So whatever this line segment is, that would be the base, because that's where the height is touching that side at a right angle. Well, that side is the same as that side. So 32 is not the base. You guys got to stop thinking that bases always guarantee to be at the bottom. This was a rotated parallelogram. I showed you that earlier. Normally it's shown like this, but we had it rotated. So the base was not at the bottom. You have to look for the dashed line and the right angle to know who the base and the height are. So fix your work if you accidentally had 32 here. All right, the inverse of multiplying by 41 is dividing by 41. Using your calculator, you will get 29. This worked out to a nice whole number. 29 inches, not square inches, area square inches. Height is regular inches. Problem number 7. Given circumference, this time we're not asked for diameter, we're asked for the radius. So we will use C equals 2 pi r because that's the formula that has the radius with circumference. If any of you guys accidentally used the area formula, that's no good because they didn't give me area. They gave me circumference. This is how I know which formula to use. So hit pause and fix your work if you accidentally had A equals pi r squared. That would not be right. All right, circumference is 89. Substitute it in. Inverse of multiplying by 2 pi is dividing by 2 pi if you want to do it the quick way. By dividing by 2 and pi at the same time, got to use parentheses here. That's going to give you 14.1647, round to the nearest tenth, 14.2, and we are talking about meters, so that's your unit of measure. Okay, problem number 8. We got a triangle. They gave us, I'm going to highlight it for you here in the directions, the area was 23.625. So let's substitute into the area formula. Formula substitute solve. Substitute 23.625 in for the A. 1/2. I like to call it 0.5. If you really want to keep it 1/2, you may. Who's the base? Well, look for the right angle. The height is this dashed line, as height normally is. The base is the line segment that touches the height at the right angle. So the total length for the doors, which is the unknown in this problem, if you read the problem, what is the total length of the doors? That is your base. So, base is, did I just flip-flop this? Underkoffler, you have a typo here. Why are you calling this H? This should be the base. I apologize about that. I'm going to have to fix that. I bet that means it's wrong in my next steps too. 0.5 times 4.5 gives you 2.25. Again, this should be the base, not the height. My apologies. Divide by 2.25 on both sides. And you are going to, again, this is not the height. This is not the height. Oh my goodness. I thought I proofread everything. I guess I didn't. So you're going to get 10.5 feet is your base. Okay, I had told you to leave 9 and 10. Not done yet because we were going to do them together. Now is the time. Let's check it out. The exact circumference of a circle is 48 pi. Well, that's unique. They gave me the circumference not as just a whole number or decimal, but a whole number times pi. That is important. That's not something you can ignore. find the area. Wow, that's a little different. Written in terms of pi, and then also rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so what are we given? Pencils ready? We were given the circumference, and that's part of a circle. So, we're not part of a circle, but that deals with a circle. So, the circumference, 48 pi, that's what we're given, obviously dealing with the circle. What are we asked to find? We are asked to find the area. Now, how in the world are we going to get that? We will eventually have to use, spoiler alert, the area formula. We eventually will. But to get area, you need radius. They never gave me the radius. But think about this. You can use the circumference formula to get the radius to solve for r. And then you can use a equals pi r squared to eventually get the area. So you had to break this down into two parts. Before you can get area, you must have radius. And in order to get radius, you either take a diameter divided by 2, but we were not given the diameter. We were given the circumference, so that's why we have to use the circumference formula, solve for r, and then we can get the area. So let's do this together. C equals 2 pi r, write it down. 48 pi is the circumference. That pi is not optional. That pi was part of the circumference. I know you're not used to circumference being given to you that way, but that's how it was given to you. To get the r by itself, we're going to do the inverse of multiplying, which is dividing. You guys saw this before. We have to use parentheses if we want to divide by 2 and pi at the same time. You can use your calculator right now. 48 times pi divided by, in parentheses, 2 times pi, and you will get 24. Really? Well, perhaps I should tell you a little something that's cool. If your circumference has pi, and you're dividing by 2 pi, the pi actually divides out the other pi. Some teachers will say they cancel themselves out. I'd like to say they divide themselves out, because pi divided by pi is 1. And this is why you actually could have done this without a calculator, this part here. 48 divided by 2 is 24. So cool. Now that only happens when you are starting with something pi divided by something pi. If this did not have a pi, the 48 pi, if that did not have the pi, then this trick would obviously not work. Okay, now that we got the radius, now we can finally use the area formula. So write this down. Pi times 24 to the second power. Now, we were told to write our answer in terms of pi, so don't use your pi key yet. Just take 24 to the second power, which is going to give you 576. So that goes right there. The pi is going to come over here. This is how this works. We've done this before, but that is how you write an answer in terms of pi. And then we have to round our answer to the nearest. Oh, not the nearest tenth. Did I say nearest tenth earlier? Nearest hundredth. Okay. So calculator gives you 1,809.557. We have to look at the 7 to figure out what the hundredths is going to be. And 7 is bigger than 5, so the 5 rounds up to 6. So that's why it's 1,809.56 square centimeters. That's right. Area is not just regular units, it is square units. If you need to hit pause to write that down, feel free to hit pause to write down whatever you have to write down. Okay, now that we did number 9 together, number 10 is the same type of problem, just different numbers, obviously. Hit pause, do 10 on your own, and then hit play when you're ready to see how you did. Okay, did you already do number 10? If not, you better hit pause now, because I'm going to go over it. So you got to do it on your own first. All right, did you start by using the circumference formula, substituting in 14.5 pi, in for the c, 2 pi r. We're going to have to divide by 2 pi to get the radius. And now that we got the radius of 7.25, and this was another problem where pi divided out pi, that was kind of cool. So we can now finally do what the problem wanted me to do. Find the area of the circle. So boom, here's the area formula. Let's substitute 7.25 in for the r. Time to get our answer in terms of pi. 7.25 to the second power. You guys do have the little second power here. Please tell me you do. Is going to give you this lovely decimal, 52.5625. Pi stays on that answer. This is in terms of pi, like they wanted me to write it. And then we are going to write our final answer. Round to the nearest hundredth, like the direction said. 165.129. 9 is big enough to make the 2 round up. And there you go, 165.13 square yards. And that finishes the guided notes on area and circumference, when to use inverse operations. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.